person was set up for failure from go.
How have I failed them, right? What could I do better to help them understand what I need and want from them?
Is that you didn't clearly define the expectation. Either you stay ignorant or you have to become better at communication.
Okay, I need to change my approach to make this better.
Mistakes are okay.
Right. To be able to continue to grow your own mindset.
If all you're focusing on winning, then you're going to lose track of actually learning.
Right? They did the work. They did the hard work. They progressed.
Are you wasting your time and money on inefficiencies in the business? Are sales down and lead conversion rates are low? Are you having problems building or maintaining inventory levels? What does it really take to win in the automotive industry?
Get the cars that make sense for your store rather than just wishing at an auction. So it gives you that better control.
With over 25 years of experience, Darrell the Wolf Steed isn't just another industry voice. He's the guy who's out there solving real problems for dealers just like you.
They'll even say in the Pacific Northwest where you're at that it's a tougher market. It's, it's tougher to find cars. The market's a little bit softer. And in the midst of all this, your turn doubled and your profit's up 75%.
Yes.
The truth hurts only when it should. Are you ready to hear the truths? Darrell is here to unpack the hard truths and the proven strategies that will take your dealership from struggling to soaring. And he is taking it all in the streets, with real talk, open dialogue, unfiltered conversations. This is the podcast series, Street Smarts, powered by SmartWolf Consulting.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Street Smarts, powered by SmartWolf Consulting. Today, we are going to go a little bit different direction. I have invited my best friend in the whole wide world on to not only talk about coaching and discipline and what it takes to have that winning attitude, but just their perspective when it comes to the customer experience and just what we don't really see because we're in it all the time. So with no further ado, I want to welcome Sherry Newell, which, as you guys can see, who's the better looking on this episode. Okay, it's not me, it never is, but she's really made me look terrible. Sherry, welcome to the show, and I thank you again for coming on. And as we start every show, we like to ask people, where are you winning in life? Not in career or anything else, but in life. Tell us what's going on, where you're winning, and and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Wow. Winning in life. I would say I am an excellent aunt. I have a wonderful relationship with my spouse. That's something that I'm very proud of. And I think those are, I think anything involving like my friends and my family, the people I love and care about, those are definitely the places that I am winning in life.
Okay. Well, listen, I mean, I don't think anyone can say it better than that. I mean, when you have that network and that support system and you love and are loved by those people, ultimately that kind of makes you life rich, which is like the goal for everybody. So typically, like when I'm on this podcast, we're talking about, how we can change the business and how we can make things better for consumers. But recently we've kind of had some conversations with interesting people, which obviously made me want to have you on is, it all starts with, creating a good foundation, and that can be whether it be discipline, it can be your drive, your focus, your process. It could be a lot of different things, but you have some very unique experiences that have come up throughout your life, and one of which we can really dive into, which is where you were a coach and had a lot of we'll say younger, more impressionable, never listen to you type of behaviors. And you did it in one of the most competitive arenas in the sports world, in cheerleading. So tell us a little bit about that when it comes to coaching, like the keys for you that made you successful and made the college team that you worked with very successful as well.
I was a coach for more than 25 years. And I think one of the biggest things for me is just having a continued mindset of growth. There's never a moment ever in my coaching career that I can look back on and think like, okay, I was good. I didn't need to learn anymore at that point. The next group of kids, the next group of young adults always coming up, their life experience is different than what I had to experience when I was a kid. And just that fact alone makes it necessary for you as a coach or a mentor to be able to continue to grow your own mindset, so that way you can not maybe necessarily fully understand from their perspective, but at least empathize with them and be able to help them and speak to them in a way that makes sense for them. Every athlete is different. And
no, that's great. Let's unpack that a little bit when you say, like, when new people come in or different people come in, because that could be looked at just like
employees. Exactly.
They come in and you have to understand that they live a different childhood life experience than you did. What was the key factor of one, understanding that for you, and then putting that into practice so that when you did engage, talk to, counseled, coach, that it was receptive rather than you talking at them, you're talking with them and as not just with them, but you're having a back and forth conversation.
Yeah, that took some learning. There was a learning curve for me for sure. I started coaching when I was 14. So by no means was I a very good coach right away. And I think that I had the benefit of having some athletes be very open and honest with me in return about telling me, hey, that's not working for me, or the way that you're communicating with me isn't making sense. And because of that, I was able to step back and think about like, oh, okay, I need to change my approach to make this better. And I think it really requires a lot of self-reflection as well. Every time that I have an interaction with an athlete, every time I left from practice, and again, like you said, this can definitely be translated into a mentor-mentee relationship or an employer-employee relationship. But every time that I had an interaction with them, I would go home and I would not necessarily, I wouldn't stress or like go over it a lot, but I would think about how could I have improved that day, that practice, that moment? What could I have done better to communicate with them? What could I have done better to help them be successful? And then once your athletes, once your employees, mentees, right? Once they have an understanding that you genuinely care about them as a human being and are trying to communicate with them in a way that's beneficial for them, not just you, then there's a lot more trust that can be built. And from there, that relationship can just explode and all parties succeed.
So it's interesting that you say, like, when you were 14 and you've been doing this for 25 years. So we appreciate you dating us because now you've shown that we're super old. Okay. So that's awesome.
I could tell them like, how long I've known you.
Yeah. So let's not. However, so when you were 14, you're not a good coach because obviously you're learning. I mean, you know the foundations of things, you know the moves, but
exactly
the communication. What does it take? Like, and I mean, obviously everyone that listens to this isn't 14 years old, but what does it take to have the humility? Because I mean, you really do to be a good leader or coach. You have to have a certain level of humility, if not quite a big level of humility of understanding, like when someone comes to you and says, I don't like this, that doesn't work for me, I'm not listening to that. Or they don't say anything because you have the personalities that just shut down because they're more introverted.
Yeah.
What does it take, or how do you, for you, how did you look at that and say, okay, not only I want to get better, but more importantly, like, what do you look at? Where do you start with in way of either research or understanding or self-reflection to like understand that it's okay to let people come at you like that and then make yourself better by that type of constructive or deconstructive criticism?
Yeah. Again, it's that was a hard won battle. Some pretty uncomfortable life lessons were learned there, of either being yelled at by my superior of whoever was the head coach at the time when I was younger, or just the realization that like I really hurt somebody's feelings, and I never want that to be the case. So having those moments of being knocked down a few pegs, it sucks. But I mean, it goes back to the, like, gosh, I've heard you say this silly quote so many times of like, the truth only hurts when it should. And I remember the first time that you said that to me, and I was like, so annoyed. But then, yeah, exactly. Right. Like, I obviously needed to be annoyed, but I think also I had some experiences just with my personal life that really helped me to be more aware of the people around me and how my actions were affecting them. And that was able to translate really well into my own coaching. I can think back about experiences that I had. For instance, I had a major career-ending injury in college. And when I really think about that moment, that injury, 90% of the cause of that injury could have been prevented had my coach been paying better attention. It was major coaching error. And I never wanted to ever put another athlete in that position. Sure. And that moment of reflection was able to kind of like, it was a catalyst for me to become a better coach, because before that moment, I definitely was this cocky little kid that was like, how come you can't get this? It's easy for me. And, moving forward from there, the more life experience that you can gain, and the more that you can broaden your horizon and not get stuck in your tiny little bubble, it helps you to have a better understanding of the human condition, really. And that helps you to be able to communicate with a lot of different people.
No, it's, it's funny when you say the catalyst of like what made you want to be a better coach, right? And obviously it took like an injury, which obviously sucks because you would hope that that doesn't happen. However, good things come from it. And I think that's interesting just in life and business, and pretty much just like you said, the human condition is when you think about it, and it takes a big person. And when I say this, guys, I'm going to be the first person to tell you, and people I say a lot of things people don't like, but it is what it is not everyone can be a leader. Not everyone can be a mentor. And the reason why is what she just said. Yeah. So something happened, and let's get real. This happens in business. This happens in life. This happens in everyday relationships. And you get that feeling of like, man, I never want to like put someone in that position, right? Or I never want to see someone go through that. Like we even make the catchphrases of like when bad things happen, like I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. Like when something's really bad, even with people you don't like. And I think it's interesting because when you look at that is like, okay, so this happens, it makes you want to be a good coach. But when we look in businesses, how many people don't look at like, okay, if I'm going to fire people, like in the automotive industry, let's get real. The turnover rate is insane. I mean, it's one of the highest in the nation for sales type based jobs.
Huge.
And is it because of coaching? Is it because of leadership? Is it self-reflection, empathy? I mean, I'm sure it's a combination of a lot of these things in every present situation. But if you thought about it in a different way and said, listen, this person's not getting it, or they're not absorbing it as fast, or this, if you thought about like how this could possibly hurt them, upset them, destroy their life, put them in a financial hardship, like all these factors that then are basically like ripples in the pond. If you thought about these things before you acted, or before you said something that could be perceived as inflammatory or hurtful, wouldn't you become a better person, a better leader, wouldn't they respond better to you? Because then you'd say, now, do I get rid of this person because they really don't get it? Or is it because I didn't have the right expectation or the right plan in line?
Exactly. I think that's a really solid point right there is, how often have you saw somebody, like, let's say it's an employee. How often have you seen an employee not succeeding and automatically jump to the conclusion that it's because they're awful, that they are a slacker, that somehow they're not smart enough to understand the process of what you're trying to do? Instead of thinking, how have I failed them, right? What could I do better to help them understand what I need and want from them?
No, I agree. I like it, and it took me a while. I mean, I would say it probably got to when I was either in the automotive industry or a manager, like probably about 6, 7 years into where it was, I no longer looked at it as if they were messing up, it was on them. Every time someone either got fired, if they quit, then I could maybe make the argument that maybe it wasn't the right fit, but it's also something how you treated them most of the time. But when you had to fire them, I never looked at it as that person failed. I looked at it as it was a failure on management, because at the end of the day, if you took the time to hire them, then you said there was something there that you thought could be relative to your business model. And if you had to fire them, you have to admit two things. One, you were either wrong about the hire, like you made a bad hire, which that's very well possible, or you didn't have the abilities that you so thought you had. Your confidence was a little bit, you outkicked your coverage in way of skill to confidence to be able to develop that person to the expectation that you wanted, right? And three, and we could say it wasn't either of those, is that you didn't clearly define the expectation. So then the person was set up for failure from go, is that they're thinking this because this is what they heard, but you're like, no, I want this because this is what you said. And so once I took that path of, hey, every time someone doesn't work out, I have to get better because I failed. What it ended up doing was I think it forces you down a path of either to stay ignorant or you have to become better at communication, because you have to figure out how you fail and how do you get better.
But one of the things that I hate most in life is staying stagnant. So why would you choose just to stay stagnant and not progress and learn and get better?
Well, I mean, the easy answer is that's hard and that's tough to continue to learn.
That's fair.
And then self-admit that, and I don't want to say the easy one where you have to admit you don't know everything. Everybody knows deep down they don't know everything. But to be in a career field and say for instance, in sales, to say, I know there's people better than me out there is kind of an oxymoron to sales, because sales works off confidence. Now, for me,
you know what? Honestly, not every relationship is the right relationship, right?
Sure. Well,
and that's hard. That is hard for me because I want to help everybody. But the truth is, I can't help everybody. And not every athlete is the right athlete for me to coach and mentor. And I'm not the right coach for every athlete, right? There's just going to be some relationships that just don't naturally fit and work out. And that's just a matter of chemistry, personality, right? All the things, if it's the right environment for them. Sometimes the way that I coach and teach just isn't going to work. And that's okay. It's not a failure on my part or the part of my athlete or employee. It just is what it is. And in that case, I try my best to part as friends and call it good.
But I think it's funny that you say that, you're not going to be the coach or the right manager or the right leader for everybody. And I think that's really enlightening. And I hope a lot of people understand what I'm about to take away from what you just said is that is not only something that more people need to admit is if you were the right person for everybody, right? If you were doing that, you wouldn't be passionate or convicted to what you do. So part of being a good coach is, okay, I've learned a way that I'm effective. Yeah. And then you're really driven and then you're compassionate about that and you literally go after it, which is part of why you're good at it, because you're really sold into how this works. If you are hey, I'm the jack of all trades and I can work with anyone, and they're going, yeah, but that's kind of what I get from you is you can work with anyone, but no one feels that that fire, that rhythm, and so you have to self-admit hey, if we had a sales team or a coaching team and I have 4 coaches, that's why you have more than a coach or a head coach and then assistants is maybe the assistant's better with these 3 people because they just get them. And maybe this one gets this one. I don't have to be the person that has to be the know all be all to every single person on my team.
You don't. And I actually have a very specific example of this. On my college team, the one I was coaching, not on, I had an athlete who ended up graduating and becoming my assistant coach. And before that, while he was still on my team, I actually would coach one of the girls on my team through him. And that did two things. One, she never listened to me. Like, I could tell her the exact same thing that I was just about to tell him to tell her, and she wouldn't hear it. But coming from him, it all of a sudden, he could say it the exact same way, but she would hear it and she would listen and she would do it. So I would call him over and say, hey, can you please go tell this person, this whatever. And so I was able to coach her through him, knowing that she wasn't listening to me. And that's okay. I didn't need that credit, right? And on the second side to that, it also taught him how to coach.
Sure. I think
it gave him the opportunity to learn.
Because when you hear it twice, right, most people are more responsive. Like some people get it and then some people don't. But I was just having a conversation last night, and I'm talking to another good friend of mine, Ozzy Gonzalez, and he's talking to this big group, and they're showing him all the analytics, and they're showing him where they can get better, and they're showing him everything. And this group, just for whatever particular reason, it's like banging into concrete wall. They're not. So I told him, I said, hey, I had just done this like lunch and learn for another group. And I said, funny enough, I was talking to another company and they asked me to come and speak. And so I said, yeah, sure, I'll come over there because, they were like, hey, we'll get you some tickets to a game. They said, what game do you want? And I'm like, hey, if you're getting me tickets to a game to come speak, I'm in. And so I said, but what they understood was when they're talking about it, right, or they're in it or coaching, that's their agenda, right? Like I'm talking about my thing. And so there may be all the things that you need to understand, like all the components are there, but you're like, well, of course that person would say it. That's their job. But then like, if I come in and I speak to them of what industry is or whatever else, and I have nothing to do with said company, but I'm actually explaining things and how it works, it naturally becomes like true because you're like, oh, well, if he's saying it, but he's not saying get this product. He's just saying get this. This is what you need to do. Because now they hear it a second time, but they hear it from both the vendor or the coach, and now they hear it from somebody that's like, hey, look, maybe try this. So now they get that second receptor, right? And it's like, it's funny because it happens in business, happens in coaching.
Yeah.
It happens with our kids. I can't tell you how many times. And then dad says another, or vice versa. And aunts and uncles or whatever it may be.
Or you've already told them 15 times and somebody else they've never met walks in and says it once and it suddenly clicks. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny. So Jackson, and now he's a, soon to be 14-year-old punk that knows everything. I don't know anything about that because I was never like this as a kid. But,
no, not at all.
But he sits there and I'm telling him these things, and then he'll hear it from someone else. He's like, Dad, you'll never believe this. I'm like, are you effing kidding me? Like, I've been telling you this for 2 years, and now it's one of your buddies.
Yeah.
Oh, you've never told me that. And I'm like, I will literally strangle you where you stand. And he laughs because he knows that to him. But it's funny because we, like you said, you have to be receptive to like, I don't need the credit.
Exactly.
I don't need people saying, oh, Darrell's this or Darrell's that or Sherry's it. Like, if you got the message and it was delivered another way and I had to go through proxy, as long as you're getting better or as long as you're learning something or as long as I don't care how it came down. Because at least I know I got, like, I helped. I don't have to be the end-all be-all. It's like, I'm just there to help you.
Exactly. And the real truth of it is, I cannot force you to do the work. So therefore, sure, I can coach you. I can teach you technique and I can give you tools to succeed, but I cannot be the one to do the work for you. So realistically, the glory is not mine when they succeed anyway. The glory is theirs, right? They did the work. They did the hard work. They progressed.
Well, in case in point, so I always use this analogy because, I love football, but I think anyone can relate it to a sport is if I give you a championship playbook, whether it's Super Bowl, championship, whatever it is, I give it to you. Here it is. Like, you've got the plays. Here it is. Like, if you run these plays, you'll beat every team. I gave it to you. But if you never open it, you never practice, you never do, it doesn't matter that I gave you the instruction of it. You still have to put in the work to perfect it or to make it work or to make it work for you. And I think people so everyone asks me, well, Darrell, some of the stuff that I talk about, some of the stuff that I do, they're like, well, yeah, we know that. I said, I don't just like 50% of what I go over is stuff that you probably can find anywhere, especially with like AI tools that just pick stuff up now. But
Oh yeah.
how do you, can you implement it? Do you understand how to get it to work? Do you understand? Because it's one thing to read it. It's another thing
Yes.
to put it into action.
Oh man, you know what? Implementation is one of the largest like key components of being a good coach. My dad always used to say this when I was growing up. He would always say, you don't know something, you don't know anything about a topic unless you know it well enough to teach it to another person.
Sure.
And again, as a kid, that annoyed me.
Because you're like, I know about this.
Exactly. As an adult, and the older I get, the more I understand what he was actually saying, right? And it's really interesting how, yeah, in theory, you can understand a topic, but if you cannot articulate well enough to teach that to another person, if you cannot break down the skills necessary to present that in a way that is educational, then you really probably should learn a little more about the subject you're talking on.
Well, and it's funny you say that because let's say you're a doctorate, right? Like you went and you know everything about a topic. Like you're deep in it. You know it. I think there's also that disconnect and people say, well, yeah, I'm perfect at it and I can teach it. Well, teaching and telling are two very different things. So it's like
very different skills.
Because I'm out there and I see these speakers and some of these guys and girls are like, they're mind blown. They're like, they can work a stage, they can do it. And they have that art to speak. And you're like, that's great. You're very confident in the subject. You can deliver the message. But
that's not a natural skill for most people. And a lot of times is a learned skill and can take a long time to learn. Yeah.
Well, but the part of that is like, now can you teach it? Because just because you can talk about it doesn't mean you can teach it. Because now I have to be able to talk to it. I have to be able to write to it. Like I have to be able to give you lessons and I have to be able to show you how to do it so that you're using VAC because you don't know how someone's going to learn.
And then adapt when your instructions weren't received well, right?
You perceived it a different way. So now you're like, oh, wait a minute. I know I said this, but they're picking it up a different way. So it's one thing of getting said, you get all this knowledge, you got to be able to teach it. It's no, you can't tell me about it. You have to be able to teach me. And you don't know that you're at that level. Right?
No.
And learning goes until when I teach you something, you then can teach it back to me. That means you have actually learned it. Because
exactly.
If you can't teach it back to me, then I just told you about something. I didn't teach you anything. And so I think where your dad was right is until you can teach it, and I'm not saying someone's going to be a master on it, but until I can teach you something, you can then explain to me back, then I need to continue to learn or evolve or adapt or constantly get better so that I'm giving
learn more about your own subject.
Yeah. Or yourself, how you deliver it, what you don't deliver. What you deliver. And then I think it comes back to what you said, which is I think one of the more powerful things that you've said is you have to be okay and understand it's okay for people not to like, I don't have to be the person to everybody.
No, I don't.
You have to live
and neither do you. Yeah.
You have to live in it and go, I'm okay. Like if there's 15,000 dealerships in the country. If I'm helping 10 to 20 of those a year, I'm good. I don't need 15,000. And so the people like this, I think I can help every store. I don't. There are some people that I'm not built to help or aren't going to be receptive, and you just have to go, it's okay.
Listen, I know you real well. I know your personality.
I don't understand this. I think flying that I couldn't help every store. Now I take it back. I damn sure could help every store.
Yeah.
No, but I think it's like you said, even if people liked me, or even if they said, hey, I like how he's assertive and aggressive, it doesn't mean that they're going to still receive it. Like they might like your personality, but they're not training or development either.
Right. You can definitely like somebody as a human and a friend and not be able to learn from them. It's just different communication styles, right? And something else that I was kind of thinking about was one of my learning curves in coaching was definitely that, okay, for instance, I grew up in California, but I have moved to a lot of different states and I've coached in a lot of different states. And when I was coaching in the Midwest, I had some communication breakdowns there because I would ask my athlete to do something and it would be in some colloquialism, right, that I learned growing up in California. So it would mean, to me, it meant one thing. To them, they would do the literal act of what I asked them to do. And it would always make me chuckle and go, okay, you did exactly what I asked you to do. Let me give you better instructions.
But,
right. So thank you. But also now I need to coach better.
No, so, I'm glad you said that because, you use the big word of colloquialism and most people will be like, what is that? They'll be looking it up as you say that, right? But, we use in the automotive industry and other businesses, we use these vernaculars and all these abbreviations. And then you wonder, like, so you're training someone or someone comes into your store and you're like, okay, ACVs and this and that. And they're like, what? And they don't even know what it is. And it's not because they did anything wrong. It's because these vernaculars and these are different. Now, some of them are similar across the country, but what you would say or how you would say it.
Right. Like the vocabulary of the industry isn't always as universal as you think it is.
Well, for instance, there's an auction and it's named ACV. Well, that's also a vernacular in the business that we use in its every day of ACV means actual cash value.
Okay, sure.
But the auction, that does not mean that. So then you're like, I don't know, are they talking about the auction? Are they talking about this? Are they talking? And so it's again, you assume people know these things because we're comfortable with them rather than saying, no, we need to talk in. And I always go back to, because I think simple instruction, I'm not saying for like when you get into mastery of something, but if a 5-year-old can't understand what you're talking about, then it's too complicated.
A lot of times, that is an accurate statement. It seems silly and almost like you're talking down to somebody sometimes, but it's not the case. A lot of times I've also noticed, because I've now been in the position where I've coached long enough that I have now coached other coaches. And I watch them coach and then, go from there. Right. And one of the things I see the most often is how fast they're talking. And when you're actually coaching, when you're actively coaching somebody, mentoring, whatever, if you're speaking that quickly, that information is not being received and processed at the same speed, especially if it's a new topic to the person that you're teaching. They need time. Slow down just a little bit so they can understand the words you're saying and how they should be processed.
Well, I think you can see that, and I'm not a big fan of it, but if you're in college, right, and you have your lectures, you might as well just shoot me in the head. I'm out. I can't do it. But
asleep immediately.
If you record it, I think that's the whole preface there is I can record it and now I can go back because the way they're jamming information into this lecture, I can either slow it down or I need to hear it 2 or 3 times so I can be like, oh, okay, he's going through a math problem or he's going through this and you're like, okay. So you're trying to retain what you're seeing because as a professor, I get it. You got 90 minutes and you got to knock out 8 chapters.
Exactly.
I got to smash this in there. But at the same time, I'm like, my brain does not fire that fast. And so if you don't record it, you're like, well, I hope I got some of this. And I think if you slow it down, and I'm not saying go slow, but if you slow it down and you understand, hey guys, I don't want to talk down to you. I don't want you to make me feel like less than you are. But what I want to do is make sure if there's any questions, which I'll call it dumbing it down. If I make it to where a 5-year-old can understand, it will be easier for you to ask a question if you don't understand simple talk than if I try to really jam it up. And then they're like, I don't even know 2 of the words he used, so I don't know what that is. And so
exactly. But then you have this opportunity to cultivate an atmosphere of safety in learning, right? It's okay to tell me that you don't understand. It's okay because that's how we grow. That's how we learn, right? I had one athlete. Sorry, I'm going to give you this example real quick. I had an athlete. She came in as a freshman in college and she did really good at the tryouts, right? And so we get into our first practices and she just would apologize every single time that I just looked her direction. I'm so sorry. Right. I guess I have been told I can be. I don't look it or sound it today, but that's okay. Um, but I finally just told her, like, it's okay. You don't need to apologize to me. I don't care where you're starting. I saw something in you and put you on my team. So now I don't care where you're starting. I care where you're headed, and I care about your progress. Let's focus on that.
You know, it's funny you say that. So there's a part of the racing team that I'm partnered in. There's this young lady, Amelia Gonzalez, and she started in the go-kart. And these go-karts
Okay.
are many go-karts, and I mean, she's ripping around the track. And she didn't finish in the top 3 all season last year. And so now she's going to do the go-karts and then a smaller little car called a Bando. And she's like, well, you know, I know that, like, you're helping me out with this and everything else, and I want to win. I'm like, I don't care if you win. I mean, if you get on the podium, that's cool. Like, that's actually for you. Like, that's
Sure.
you said you wanted to do this. I have the ability to help make your dream come true. You have to put in the work. All I want to see you do is either get better, have fun, or learn something every time you go out.
Yeah.
If you say that you don't, if you get to the point where, like, I'm not learning, I'm not having fun, well, then it's time to do something different. But if you don't win, if all you're focusing on winning, then you're going to lose track of actually learning. And
Yeah.
really, and so it took a lot of pressure off her. Now the next
Learning and enjoyment.
yeah, so the next time she went out and did a race, because now there's no real pressure, she ended up, like, I think 4th, so she almost got to the
Oh,
podium.
nice.
But I was like, go have fun. Like, maybe this is your career, maybe it's not. But at the same time, if you don't actually go into it with a positive attitude,
It matters.
you're gonna shut down. Well, you're more likely to say.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think with that girl you're talking about, it probably made it feel like, hey, it's not about where you started. It's about where we
And it was amazing. It was an amazing moment for her of realization of, like, oh, you're right. You did see something in me. I can calm down. She ended up being one of the best and most enjoyable athletes that I have ever coached in my entire coaching career.
Well, I would imagine once she saw that you believed in her for a long term, that it wasn't like you got 30 days or you're out. Then she was like, okay, I just need to, like, take it serious. I just need to put focus in this. Like, mistakes are okay.
Right.
And
You're not going to get cut from my team.
Sure.
I just need you to know where you're at so that we can grow. Right.
Well, and I can give you the right coaching tips to say, like, okay, hey, you're not, like, in your particular thing, you're not doing the setup right. So all I need to do is coach you on setup, right? Rather than, I don't need to coach you when, like, you're doing the tumble, or, like, you're getting that, you're just not getting X, right? So that you can be more focused on the lessons, which I think some people kind of go, I want to do all this group training and I want to do this, but they don't realize, like, maybe you don't need the group, like, you need very specific things. So it's like, fine, spend 15 minutes in the group and then spend the other times, like, addressing the individual things.
Not only that, but just in general, if that's the only way that you're teaching is in group settings, I'm sorry, but that is bad technique.
I agree.
Because how often have you been trying to talk to a group of people and you are realistically addressing one person's behavior, but you're saying it to a whole group so that you can save face with that person? Or, right, you don't have to call them out and embarrass them necessarily. And I think that's where the fear of talking to them individually comes in, is that, like, I don't want to embarrass that person. Let's just address the whole situation, right? But realistically, the one person that actually needs to hear it probably does not even know you're talking to them.
Well, and oddly enough, when you say that, so I was talking to this group, I don't know if I was on Clubhouse or on one of these platforms, but they were like, well, and we were talking about millennials and Gen Z and Gen A, and they're like, well, I'm not going to do multiple different trainings. And I'm like, I'm not saying you have to. What I'm saying is if you do it in this group setting and you're training, you got a Gen X, a millennial, a Gen Z, and you're just going to do one message, you lost half the ring.
Yeah.
And because they communicate in different ways. And they always go back to, well, I don't have enough time to do that. I'm like, I agree. You probably don't.
Yeah.
That's where the investment comes in of having a coach, a mentor, a trainer on staff, where that's their job to go do individual, group, like so that you can have effectiveness. But then they say, well, I'm not going to hire a trainer or coach because they don't really generate income. They're an expense. Well,
Okay, I mean,
right, is like,
yeah,
I don't have turnover, then they are a revenue generation type of situation. So
even so that particular thought right there is a very stagnant thought, right?
Sure.
There's no growth there. Even with me, I know that there is still progress I can make as a coach. I've been coaching a very long time. I have been in the industry of cheer and gymnastics my entire life. I know a lot about it. And even with that being said, there are still other coaches who are younger, less experienced than I am, who have a different way of looking at things that help me to have a different perspective. And I am not, I don't know. I'm humble enough, there we go, to recognize that I'm still capable of learning just as much as they are.
well, but I think that's what is interesting. Like, and that's why we've always had good conversations. Is let's take Gen A.
Yeah.
Forget Gen X or millennials, right? But let's just check Gen A. Are you really going to coach Gen A people the same you would coach a Gen X person? Like,
No.
their communication, everything about them is different.
Yeah.
And so if you don't learn how to do something different, it's your effectiveness goes down based on generational change.
Yeah. Your effectiveness can go down based on locational change. It's just, I mean, it's the exactly the same like communication breakdown, right? It's not generational, but it's regional. And for instance, in California, I'm not overly nice. I'm not mean. I'm just a person, right? I fit in with the attitude and the, air of a person. But I go to the Midwest and they all of a sudden think that I'm like the rudest person they've ever met. But then on the East Coast over in New Jersey, they all thought that I was the nicest person they've ever met. Right. And I'm just me, but it just depends on how it's received. Yeah.
It's funny you say Jersey. So when I'm in California, Darrell, you're super direct, you're kind of aggressive. And I'm like, okay. I go to New Jersey and they told me I'm a pussy cat. Like I'm like one of the, and I'm like, I don't even understand what's happening. Like,
yeah,
it's funny. Yeah. So if I drop more F-bombs or if I'm like throwing stuff at you, now I'm like receptive, and they're like, that's their culture or that's their demeanor. The message,
the communication style, they understand. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like the message is still effective, but how it's given or how it's taught changes. So when I did a 20 group, I think I was a couple hours from one of the areas you lived from. I was in Kansas City.
Oh, yeah.
And so,
like an hour.
Yeah. And so I'm doing this, and I remember I'm in the Midwest. Very different pace, very different thing. So when I do it, I have to remember, like, oh, wait a minute. I gotta tweak it down. I gotta do, because it was understanding how they communicate in that.
Yeah, there's different accepted ways of communicating that are considered to be more polite or professional. Yeah.
One time. Like if you're in San Francisco, California, listen.
Yeah. It's fast.
I go to Kansas City, Missouri. They're like, okay, explain it to us.
Right.
Like they're okay with like getting the dichotomy of how this works and everything. I'm in San Francisco like this. You got 30 seconds. Tell me how it works.
Yeah.
So you're like
elevator pitch.
Yeah, you're the elevator pitch. Go. And so you need to, that's part of reading the room, and that's also part of learning.
Yeah.
Like if I did the same talking points, or if I did the same training things across the country, I would be effective in probably 2 areas and never have business in the middle of the country.
Yeah. But to that point though, that goes back to the whole, like, you're not going to be the right coach or teacher for everybody, right? So if you remain true to yourself, which you absolutely should, if you're remaining true to yourself, of course you're not going to be successful in every market, right? But work with the ones you are.
Sure. And understanding that if you're not, it's not a personal thing.
No.
It's not you. It's, look, they need something that better serves them. And maybe it's not what they need. I take that back. Maybe it's not what they need. It's what they feel comfortable with. Because when you do change and coaching and training, you're basically saying that you're you need help.
Yeah.
And so now you don't like the fact that you've already admitted you need help. You want it to be as comfortable as possible rather than like creating this level of discomfort all the way around.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
you know,
Growth is uncomfortable.
when you admit like, hey, I have a problem, you're like, hey, can I get somebody that makes this a little more palatable? Like you don't want to like admit you have a problem and then get like the roughest, toughest, most direct person in the world to like lay it on.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I think it's interesting because like the success you've had kind of translates to business because there's this impression, even though you're a coach and a mentor and a leader, that is kind of customer experience. Like what you do, how it works.
Yeah.
And if they look at you as like, I was just watching Gary Vaynerchuk, right, who created Twitter, and he's sitting there, he's got a little Nike swoosh, and he's like, do you guys understand the shoe's a commodity? The swoosh is the like that's the brand.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of that. Your personality, your success, that's your brand. So
yeah, for sure.
Have a good customer experience, or they don't believe they don't like you. You're not going to go very far because they don't know you as being something they want to be around or something that they want. Because your brand is you, right? As a coach, as a mentor, as a leader, whatever it may be.
And everybody's personal life experience is different. Well, we're all human. We all share a lot of experiences, but there are different things that you went through than somebody else went through, and your brain processed it differently than theirs would have.
Of course.
And so, you know, just the way that you receive things. For me, learning about customer service was a key part of my life. I grew up, I spent a lot of time in my dad's medical office growing up, and he was very clear with us that if we were going to be there, that we needed to present in a professional way and to be on point with how we spoke to the patients coming in if we were working in his office. And from there, I actually had a really positive experience. One of my first jobs that wasn't coaching was working at a bank. And that particular bank had a really good, solid training program. And the biggest part of their training was all about customer service. And so I don't think that anybody can waste their time by learning more about that.
Sure. Like I just did a training this morning. The first thing I said is, so they're sending responses out. And I'm not going to tell people what to say because it could be different across the country. But I'm going to ask the question, it's like, okay, when you see this, would you respond to it?
Sure.
And they're like, and all of them said no. And I'm like, okay, well, if we say no, why are we sending it? And then more importantly, the next question comes in, what would have to be in the response? Text, email, video, phone call. What would it have to be there for you to be like, oh, that resonates? So we made it do an exercise. And oddly enough, it was like, I was like, well, guys, if you would respond to it and you have to deliver it, wouldn't you think you want something that like interests you or that engages you so that you can be in a path? And they're like, oh, we never thought about it. Because we don't, right? We're just told rather than, hey, let's make it to where we can have a two-way conversation. Let's make it to where, guys, I hope you guys understand, like, getting the conversation. This is just your everyday person. This isn't someone in the industry. Actually, there's no who could ever get into the auto industry.
No.
And I know it's been a while since you bought a car, but I wanted to get a different perspective because I tell people all the time they think I'm just full of it and I'm just making this stuff up. So I've had a couple people on about just going in and they have to deal with the experience. When the last time you bought a car, kind of tell us like the things that you saw, right? The things you liked and the things you definitely don't like when it comes to being
Okay, so buying a car for me is real annoying. I look younger than I am. I always have, which is going to really work out great for me later in life. But because of that, I often get talked down to as though I just don't understand or whatever. I couldn't possibly know what I want. And my most recent car buying experience, I was going in because my car broke down, needed a new one, right? I mean, I think that's a good reason for most people to need a new car. Yeah. And I have a 95-pound dog who goes with me a lot of places. And I need that 95-pound dog to be able to fit in a vehicle and to be able to get in and out of that vehicle easily because I'm not picking her up. So knowing that, I went in, I know what I need. I know how I use my car. I know my daily habits, but the salesperson doesn't. So for them to come at me immediately and start telling me what they thought that I needed, that happened, was really, really obnoxious and off-putting. And I did not want to stay there. I didn't want to buy a vehicle from them. I didn't want to continue being in a conversation with them even, but I did because I had a need. And I've had this vehicle now for 9 years. So, I mean, it ended up being a decent experience overall, just not with the actual dealer. One of the other things that drives me crazy and I don't understand, so maybe you can help me out with this one. I don't understand why when you buy a car, you have to sit there for like half the day to get the paperwork all taken care of. Why are is this a thing? My house loan didn't even take that long.
I wish that I could solve this for you because I also have this concern. And the question every time is, I get if you're outside looking at 4 or 5 different cars, that takes an hour or two because you want to test drive some stuff. That's on you, right? You're shopping, you're looking around.
Exactly.
But I don't understand it. Why don't we sit down?
Mm-hmm.
And we have to.
Why am I there for another 4 hours?
The credit app and we have to do all that. Unless you are literally the most aggravating customer in the world that wants to grind everything, right? And even then, how does it take more than an hour to do the paperwork and then get done? I'll even give you, if it's on a Saturday because you went during peak time, 2 hours. But I had that same cop, and I do a lot of training to this. Guys, I have now bought 9 houses.
Yeah.
The longest one that's taken about an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And
this is a major loan situation.
And that was a new house where I had to grind the realtor to like get the price I wanted. Then they said, okay, I signed all the docs. And then at final closing, they sent someone to my house to do all the, stuff.
Oh, sure. All
the final stuff. And I go like this. If we know time's important to almost everybody, I've asked this, tons of reviews on it. It's always time, money, family, or people you care about, or whatever. Like top 3 in 90% of society of like where they are. Why would we think consumers are going to be excited about making their day? Like you want to go to a dealership like it's a movie marathon, and that's where I want to be. Yeah. Oddly enough, there is a store up in Idaho that actually has a movie theater right next to it.
Okay.
The reason they do this is they have a lot of business. They'll say, "Hey guys, we're pretty backed up," and if it's like a regular Century Theater. So they have all the movies.
Oh, nice.
What movie would you want to do? So they distract you with something you would want to do. You're not thinking about getting cooked in the dealership.
Yeah.
And I get it. It's an investment and maybe it doesn't pay off. But from an experience standpoint, do you think anyone ever says, I was there for, they're like, no, it took a while, but they sent me to the movies. They sent me to it so long. Like, they sent me and got something like, so
sure.
They're going like, I cannot believe I sat here for 5 hours.
Yeah. So your day's worth of experience that day ends up being a little more positive than just sitting in a cubicle or an office.
Because you're not thinking about why it's taking so long. They're rediverting your focus. And I always find it interesting because people say, oh, we get it done really quick. Is what I think part of the issue is their process is broken. But the other part is they don't know how to, or they run like not enough staff, or they don't know how to be efficient of like, I have to get you into finance. You put an egg timer on it, you only get so much time with that one person, and then you got to go. Is because the longer you make the next person wait, the chances are you're less effective.
Yeah.
Like in the automotive industry, which is interesting, is we're very focused like this on what's in front of us rather than looking at the whole surrounding. I got 12 people in my showroom. I can't focus on just this. I'm going to give you some attention.
Sure.
I have to shift.
Right. There's other things that you have to pay attention to. So in coaching, we call that direct supervision or indirect supervision, right? And so when you are like actively having to hands-on spot somebody through a skill, you still need to position yourself in a way that you can still visually supervise the rest of the people that you are responsible for keeping safe.
Yep.
And so in a business setting, that's hey, I'm giving you attention, but I still need to pay attention and be aware of the other people here that also need my attention.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And I think that's a disconnect because again, when you think of sales, it's like, okay, once we sell them, like we're like, okay, we're good, rather than understanding the precipice of like, if I sell you a car, right, or a service, it doesn't stop at this single point, right? For most of your consumers. Now, like you've moved around, so maybe they're only going to sell you cars because you've moved around with your husband, but most of the time you're in that area. When I sell you this is the start of the relationship, not the end.
Exactly.
Like at the end, and once you're done, they're not going to see you again. But inevitably, you want them in service. You want them to come back.
Yeah. Well, and that being said, I have moved around a lot, but my family as a whole, there was a dealership up in Auburn, California. I don't think it's there anymore, but anyway,
it's owned by a different person now, but it's still there.
Okay. Anyway, my dad was ended up becoming friends with the owner. But it wasn't to begin with. And we ended up like collectively between like my parents, my siblings, and myself. She ended up being like our only car dealer for a long time. I think we collectively bought like 22 vehicles from them. And this was obviously over the span of a number of years, right? This didn't happen all at once, but it's amazing how much that little bit of extra relationship building mattered. And it mattered that we didn't feel like we could go in there and say, hey, this is what I need at the moment. And this is what I'm looking for. And she would say, okay, I'll let you know when I find it, if she didn't have it. Right.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you say that. So like the family and everything, let's say it's over 10 years. Let's just put that as a time.
Yeah.
22 cars, not to mention servicing, if you guys service your cars there, or warranties, or any of the other things, right? That could have been easily destroyed or gone in the first one or two transactions. If
100%
care and experience is better. But when you think about that, so a little bit of care,
yep,
a little bit of like empathy, and a little bit of like taking some time, not like really making you the focus,
and a hell of a lot of honesty,
and yeah, not like trying to like do the 1980 version of the car
exactly.
And
yeah.
By them getting one car deal, then it was like, okay, you're going to go there, then your sisters are going to go there, then you're like, all of a sudden it's like, now I say this in a way of like experience, like you own a family of like, they become indoctrined to you because you're like,
totally.
Why would you go anywhere else? They've always been right. Rather than, well, I sold Sherry a car, like I'm not, whatever. Like,
my husband and I bought 2 vehicles from that dealership from out of state. Like we had moved all the way to Florida, and then we're in the process of moving from there to Alaska. And in the middle of that move, we stopped through and bought a vehicle. And we did that another time, moving state to state again. And so even living out of state from that, we still went back to that same person because we knew that there was a level of trust there and a relationship that was already built.
Listen, I think we have kind of wrap it right there, guys. You just heard someone like doesn't like it. It's your everyday consumer, right? Shops like everybody else.
Yeah.
State to state, I shouldn't say state to state, from end to end of the country, like literally.
Yes, corner to corner.
Corner to corner. And they stopped through, re-diverted, went a longer route, but they came to see family, but to buy a car because of that, and then did it again because of the experience and trust. So
Yep.
when you guys are watching this, I want you to think about everything that Sherry gave us today, but then I want you to end with that is, how many customers do you have that the family, them, their siblings don't even think about shopping around and come back to you because of your experience?
Yeah.
And when you think about that, I'm sure everybody has a story like Sherry. But why aren't you trying to make every story like Sherry's experience? Because would you really do a lot of advertising and marketing if everyone just came back to you? Like, I didn't even think about this. I mean, it kind of seems like the way to do it. So, you guys, when we're on Street Smarts, we always want to give you a unique perspective, kind of tying into different things, because I think people think automotive is like this special, like it's different. It's not.
But it really isn't. It's human experience.
It ties into a lot of different things. It ties into coaching. It ties into leadership. It ties into mentoring. And then the experience. We have to really talk to more people like Sherry and Dr. Sarah is like, what is their experience? I know what we think we deliver, but do we ever then sit down and have a conversation and say, is this what we're delivering? And are we afraid to have that conversation? Don't be afraid to find out the truth, because that's how you get better, right? So we're going to wrap things up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And as we always think and say is that if you learned one new thing, if you got a little bit better today, that's what we go for, is just to bring a new perspective, new difference, and something new. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next episode. Sherry, stick with me for just 1 second.